Now, I want to talk about the storms. Now, these crazy, amazing things happened. I mean, a guy that would never receive a prayer lifts his arms, he gets totally healed in front of everybody. They would never think that should be done or that could be done. But you had major storms, and you learned an important lesson about how to differentiate a storm that you need to have people need to rest in God in it, and a storm that's from the serpent. You had storms going in and out of that whole wonderful breakthrough that you had in November in Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Yeah, and people need to be aware that sometimes there's a battle you fight before the battle you win.
Yes.
But other times there's the battle you fight after the battle you won. And you have to be aware of both of those two examples.
So you had fights going in.
You had fights going in, and there were storms that tried to stop me because on the other side is breakthrough.
Right.
So sometimes there's storms that the enemy is sending to stop you from your destiny.
Yeah.
And you have to be aware, is this a serpent or is this a storm?
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to be like eagles and eagle Christians. And eagles embraces the storm but resist and fight the serpent. But some of us, we're fighting against certain storms that we're supposed to learn how to rest in.
We're supposed to be like Jesus in the boat with our head on the pillow.
Yeah, so then I asked Jesus, because I came home and I got food poisoning while I was over there.
Wow.
I got bronchitis, I got fever. The other guy was out several days, and it was just hit after hit after hit before, during, and then afterwards. And I'm supposed to finally enter into rest, and then suddenly we're getting
had this
up
great
with,
victory, Elijah on the mountain.
That's right. And then we're ending up with COVID and discouragement and attack and friends dying. And it was just like a long list of hit. And finally, on January 1st, just recently, I stood before the Lord and I said, God, what is going on? And he said, we are in an inlet of transition from 2021 to 2022.
Come on.
And you are right in the middle, and there's two storms, that is. But one of those storms, you need to understand that I said, let us go to the other side. So my question to every one of us when we're facing the storm is, what word did Jesus give us before the storm?
He said they were going to the other side.
He said, yes, why are we afraid we're drowning when we're going to get to the other side?
Yes.
It doesn't matter what the circumstances, if I get COVID, and I'm experiencing all of those different things against me, I'm in the middle and I'm drowning. Jesus! So I was just like the disciples in the middle after, because my emotional tank is down. And what the enemy is trying to do is to wear us out.
Yes,
that's the
wearing
weapon
down to
of
the
the enemy.
saints.
That's what he's trying to wear down the saints. And if we do not learn that the one storm is teaching us how to rest, the hard work of rest, and using rest as a weapon of warfare. One of the worst things you can do in the middle of that storm, because what the enemy wants us to do is to end up in panic and fear. And then it becomes us against the enemy, instead of watching what Jesus is doing. And when I'm watching Jesus, first of all, he took a pillow into the boat. Why would he bring a pillow? You can read it there in Mark 4.
Yeah, right.
He brings a pillow. He knows there's going to come a storm.
So he knows he needs to.
But he chooses that when I'm going to sleep, I'm going to sleep well, and I'm bringing a pillow to sleep in the middle of
And
this
I want
storm.
you guys to think how hard that is. It says that the waves kept on beating and beating and beating into the boat until it was almost filled and going to sink. So Jesus is sleeping in that? That is masterful.
And the major reason is because where his Father is, there is rest. And all he did is what he saw the Father do.
Ooh.
And all he said is what the Father said. So in the sense that he could be at rest, because where his Father is, there is rest. So when you're seated with Christ in the heavenly, and that's your operating system. So the next thing that is happening, they are panicking with what's happening. And whatever overwhelms you shapes you.
Yeah.
Jesus was overwhelmed by the Father and the peace the Father had.
And he was sleeping.
So he was sleeping. And the best thing we can do is to find out what Jesus is doing in that. So if Jesus is resting, I bring my pillow and I just find that place also together with Jesus.
Pack
and
your
I'm
pillow,
going to
everybody.
I'm going to rest with you through that.
Come on.
So we have to learn that, because we're going to go to war in the next moment.
Okay, I want you to stop right there. Tell us practically, what does it look like to rest in the storm?
Well, what it means with it's connected to trust. It's connected to, like, the Isaiah 40:31 says, those who've wrapped themselves in him, those that wait. The word waiting upon the Lord
means
meaning
to be
we're wrapped in.
Yes.
Those that wait upon the Lord, they shall renew their strength.
Yes.
Then you shall mount up with wings as eagle. You're going to run, but not grow weary.
Yeah.
And you're going to walk and not faint.
You're going to rise above the storm.
You're going to rise above the storm. So in the place of rest, it's like an eagle. The storm is coming. The storm is not an enemy for an eagle. It's like a sailboat. The wind that comes against you is going to actually get get you to fly faster. It's going to build strength.
Yeah.
It is like a rock that is not
The
moving.
eagle uses the wind in the storm to
It
rise higher.
Higher, yeah.
Yes.
But often we think it is we are trying to rebuke it instead of embracing it,
Okay.
because we think it is a serpent, while it is not a serpent.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it
It is.
isn't.
That's what I'm saying. This is the
Yes.
discernment of the different. So that one storm is to learn how to rest. The other one is to go to war. So those are the two
Okay.
storms that we have. I mentioned there's two storms.
Okay.
One of them is the one there with Jesus. He was resting.
Yeah.
And then he could speak to the storm that was around him because there's no storm on the inside.
Yeah.
So first, what I would encourage you is there's three storms. One is a physical storm. That could be finances, health, COVID, everything that's going on. It's real. All of us are being affected by it. So I want us to be authentic and real and just name your storm. Here are the
Yeah,
physical.
chat in and name the storm, guys,
Yeah.
right now.
It is
Go
so
ahead.
important. And then there's the emotional storm. What's happened on the inside of you? I'm discouraged. I feel a little hopeless. Yesterday I sat there with Patricia King and the leadership, and last night we were sitting together because storms was even hitting us. I was supposed to have a meeting to give language for this last night. And guess what? Somebody drives into the pole. Another storm. I got migraine headache.
And turns off the whole power at the studio.
The whole studio to stop the meeting.
Yes.
So these storms are real, and the storms is trying to shut us down and all of that. So I'm not saying that, but what do you feel in the middle of it? What you're feeling, Jesus, where are you? Why are you not here? God, why are you not hearing me? God, you're supposed to be in control. You're large and charge. You're bigger than the devil. But instead, what you're not realizing in the middle of it, so we start to question when Jesus is, and that's what the disciples said, why are you asleep? Don't you see we are?
Yeah, they even accused him. Don't you care that we're perishing?
Yeah.
Which a lot of times in the middle of a terrible storm, we start accusing God. Why aren't you here? Why didn't you do this? You could do that.
Yeah, so that's why it's so important for them to name those emotions.
Yes.
So it could be fear, it can be shame, it can be anxiety, it can be hopelessness, it can be, starts to name those things and then go
name
over
your
to
emotional storms,
and
guys,
just-
right now in the chat.
And then there is a spiritual storm. And that spiritual storm is we do not see what God is doing. And then we get distracted by what God is not doing.
Oh, say that again.
I said that because we do not see, we see the waves, we see everything else. We don't see what God is doing. He seems silent. He seems distant. Because we do not see what God is doing, we get distracted by what God is not doing. And then we're getting overwhelmed by what God is not doing. And then whatever overwhelms us shapes us.
How do we overcome the times when we fall into that pattern of just seeing, God's not doing this, God's not doing that, but he's really, it says that out of the increase of his government and of his peace, there is no end.
Yeah.
So he's always at work. How do we break free from that pattern?
Now, the first thing that I do is I'm going back to who I am and whose I am.
Okay.
This because there's always an attack on the identity. Who are you really? And whose are you really? So if you feel like an orphan in the middle of that storm, you do not have a father that's going to protect you, provide for you, and take care of you. So the orphan heart and the orphan spirit, that's why Jesus in John 14:18, he says, I will not leave you as an orphan, but I will come to you. And I even believe that what killed him on the cross was for a moment he became an orphan so that we could become sons and daughters. He says,
Father, why have
Eli,
you forsaken
that's
me?
right, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani.
Yeah.
Before he always called him Papa, at this moment he says, God, 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 why have you forsaken me? He didn't call him Papa because for a moment he became an orphan so that we could become sons and daughters.
Come on.
For a moment he was separated from perfect love so we could be connected to perfect love just like he had with the Father. So for us it is so important for us to going into the identity. And I'm saying here's another key for us, because some of us, like us, we have an apostleship or we have leadership or we have all these ships, stewardship, friendship, relationship.
Sinking ships.
And they are sinking ships.
Yeah.
But make sure that sonship and daughtership goes before all the other ships.
Come on.
And it is a tiny little
Wow.
boat. It is a tiny little boat that navigates through the storm always.
Wow.
So this is a major key. The dove, the Holy Spirit will always rest in sonship and daughtership.
Wow.
And that's where you see with Jesus that he was affirmed by the Father, anointed by the Spirit. But when the dove came there, the enemy was attacking. If you are the Son, do something. If you are, so are you really who you are? Why are you afraid? Why are you? So the enemy is going after you when you don't know who you are.
And
But
that's why you have
Jesus-
so much power and favor, because you walk in sonship. So the dove is always resting on your shoulder.
Yeah.
That's why people, Sheiks and Muslim people, can raise their arms and have their shoulders healed just like that.
Because, and that's why he talks that in the kingdom, it's childlikeness. I'm not saying childish. It is to be like little children again.
Yes.
And the little thing there, it's like you're going, if you have a little 2-year-old going up to someone in Walmart and say, can I pray for you? Even if it is an atheist and a
They're
Muslim,
going to
they will
say
say
yes.
And that's kind of the thing with us. It's like you do these things that is so silly that nobody would do that in the front of the Shia Muslim leaders and this and that. I go right into my sonship. Papa. It's like a Papa. And I get that. And it melt the Father's heart. It is the Father's good pleasure to give these people good gift. That childlikeness and the innocence. And I'm feeling
thank you, Lord.
God wants to restore somebody's childlikeness and innocence
God.
back.
Yes,
Because when did it stop being fun? When did it stop being
Wow.
fun?
Wow.
Well, we lost the joy in the middle of it. And we've been so focusing on where we were supposed to get, and then disappointment came in because hope deferred made your heart sick. But in this season, you're going to start to desire and dream again because it is the tree of life. But get back to the identity, because out of the identity there is intimacy. And what we are trying to do is we're forgetting our wedding band.
Wow.
And what I mean with that is that we've forgotten about covenant. So what we're
We
doing...
are in covenant
We are
with
in
God.
covenant,
He's in
yeah.
covenant with us.
Yes, yes. So David says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? So when you're dealing there with a storm, you first have to name the giant, and then you have to have a name for God.
Oh, okay, wait, stop. Did you get that? I want you to repeat that. Okay. So David came at a giant, at Goliath, from his position of sonship.
Sonship.
Who are you?
Yeah, who are you? I have a wedding band on. I'm in covenant with a covenant-keeping God.
Yeah,
And when
you're
I
not.
Now, so who are you? And since it was war, David named a giant, Goliath. When he had to name the giant, that could be poverty, it can be pain, it can be COVID.
Wow.
Then you need to have a name for God. It is not the time to call Jehovah Rapha when there's war. So he called him Jehovah. What did he call him? Jehovah Sabaoth, meaning
Lord of hosts.
the Lord of hosts. And then he called him God, my warrior. And then at that moment, the war in the spirit is over. So when you name your giant, you need to have a name for God. So it's like if Bill Gates is your father, then you know there is no financial issue. And this is with sons and daughters knowing the aspects of the names of God and the face of God coming in. And Papa, I have access. Is called inheritance for sons and daughters. Inheritance. What's true of Jesus is true of us. And then coming in before the Father and knowing that when I named that giant, that's what Jesus knew, that storm that was there, he could speak to that storm. He had authority over the storm he could sleep in, that he could rest in.
Wow.
And that's what's happened with us, mainly because of his relationship to the Father. I do what my Father do, that is resting. And second of all, I say what my Father says, storm right now. And he could speak to the storm, and the storm had to listen to him. So if we can learn to get back to the identity, that's always my resting place of who I am, but also whose I am. And then not just having the robe, but also make sure you put on the ring. Because so many of us, we're coming on another date with Jesus, forgotten we're married to him.
Well, when the prodigal son came back, the first thing the father did was he put the ring on his finger, shoes on his feet, the robe on him. I mean, he anointed him and dressed him for being a son.
Yeah, and the robe gets you to heaven, but the ring brings heaven to you.
Come on.